welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Donna Rice, the Chief Operations Officer for Diabetes Sisters. And for those of you who don't know, Diabetes Sisters is an online community dedicated to providing education, support, and advocacy for women living with diabetes and for those at risk. As we celebrate World Diabetes Month, we're excited to spotlight groundbreaking advancements in diabetes care and also personal success stories from our members. Today, we're thrilled to bring you an innovative webinar presented and sponsored by Qvin, titled From Vision to Reality, Advancing Women's Health with FDA-cleared lab testing using menstrual blood. This revolutionary approach introduces a non-invasive method to measure A1C using menstrual blood, offering women with diabetes another convenient and empowering way to monitor their health. So we're very honored to have Dr. Sara Naseri with us today. Dr. Naseri is the co-founder and CEO of Qvin. She's a physician with a deep passion for advancing women's health and a visionary behind this remarkable innovation. Her dedication to making health monitoring more accessible is truly inspiring. She'll share insights about the journey of developing this technology, its impact on diabetes management, and the broader implication for women's health. Before we begin, a quick note. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature and we'll address them after Dr. Naseri's talk. So without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Naseri.
Thank you so much, Donna. It's so exciting to be here. Thank you for having me. Excited to share what we are building at Qvin. And of course, you know, our very first focus is how we can make healthcare more accessible for the part of the population that are living with diabetes. But we'll also be talking about kind of more broadly speaking, the implications for women's health of this particular opportunity. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about kind of how the journey started. We've been at it for almost 10 years, so I can almost not even believe how long it's been. It's been a long journey to get to this point today. But really, the journey started while I was still in medical school, and I spent 7 years there, really sort of both in practice and, of course, in theory, learning and understanding just how important, you know, time is for prognosis. And unfortunately, it is still very hard for us to do early detection and to be preventative about our health. And one of the reasons is that it is really hard actually to know what's going on in our bodies. It's hard to get data on what's going on, especially outside the doctor's office. And it's you know, patients rarely go to the doctor unless they have a symptom. So it's generally speaking just very hard to be preventative today. And that was something that was going on in my mind at the time. How can we make this? How can we become more preventative? How can we enable early detection and allow for people to know what's going on in their bodies as early as possible to kind of better outcomes for our health? And so thinking through that, of course, you know, the challenge is, well, how do we get information? And blood being the most commonly used bodily fluid for most diagnostics was, of course, top of mind. And then one day it sort of hit me. Half of the world bleeds every single month. Why has nobody used that? And that question has led on this very long 10-year journey to understand the diagnostic utility of menstrual blood. And, you know, when we started, really, there was not a lot of information about the utility of menstrual blood or what it even is. Frankly, at the time, there was only one paper published on the diagnostic utility. So we've really sort of had to start from scratch. I came to the US, it's about 10 years ago now, again, and worked at Stanford OBGYN with the University Hospital on really laying down some of the early research to understanding the utility. And we'll be talking a little bit about that now. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you can all see what I'm seeing here. This is the company, the name of the company. So it's called Qvin. The word actually means woman in Danish, and that's because myself and my co-founder are actually originally from Denmark. And our vision is to keep women healthy. And we do that by utilizing menstrual blood. Menstrual blood is a very unique bodily fluid. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we've learned through the research we've done so far. So we know menstrual blood consists of systemic blood. So the same blood, you know, when you go down to the doctor or the laboratory to get a venipuncture, You can find the same information in menstrual blood. But in addition to that, we also have endometrial tissue and vaginal fluid, which gives us a little bit less than 400 unique proteins that tells us information specifically about the reproductive organ that we have access to when we look at a menstrual blood sample. And because of this unique composition, we can really unlock solutions to some of the biggest women's health issues. These are sort of examples of very big women's health issues where we today either don't have any way to diagnose or where the diagnosis is very invasive and inaccessible. And because of menstrual blood's unique composition, we really have an opportunity to solve for some of these in a very, very convenient way. So we'll talk more about this in a second. But before we go into that, how do we capture this opportunity? Let me talk a little bit about the Q-Pad, which is a medical device that we've built. It's essentially a modified menstrual pad that looks, feels, and it's used like any other menstrual pad. It's built on organic cotton. But the difference is that there is a small collection strip embedded inside of the pad. So when women use it, on average, women will use it for 2 to 4 hours, and then they've collected enough blood. You pull this little tab that removes this collection strip, and that is what we then, you throw away the pad like you would with any other menstrual pad, and then that strip is what you put in this secure mailing container, and that's then received at a clinical laboratory where the analysis is done. All of the results, and including also instructions of how to use the Q-Pad, are really communicated through an app. We call it the Qvin app. And it's how you register your kit, the instructions, but also how we share your results so that you can have an easy way to see over time how your health is changing, how your A1C is fluctuating. And it showcases that in a user-friendly way. But you can also very easily share the results with your doctor through the app. You push a button and it spits out this a typical laboratory report that doctors are very used to seeing, and you can share it if you choose to do so. That's a little bit about kind of the system that we've built, the Q-Pad. And I want to share a kind of a video that shows a little bit sort of the process that you go through. So let's see if we can get this to work. Here we go. So yeah, so the very first thing you do is you download the app, and that's how you register the kit. Then you use the Q-Pad like you would any other pad, really. You fill this little oval. That's how you know you've collected enough. You pull the tab that removes the collection strip. It's placed in this little container that comes with the kit, which can be put in this little mailing pouch that is pre-stamped and can be shipped via regular mail. We receive it, and about a week later, you receive your results on the mobile phone that showcases the results. So that's kind of the process behind the Q-Pad. And now just to kind of talk a little bit about what we know we can do, and what some of the areas of women's health. Looks like I'm gonna have to jump out of the presentation for a second and back in again here. Want to sort of talk a little bit about some of the areas of women's health that we've looked at that we're really excited about, starting with cervical cancer. Of course, it's a cancer that today still kills hundreds of thousands of women, but that we know is entirely preventable. So one of the things that we've looked at is, how can we screen population-wide for this particular cancer in a way that is more accessible? And as some of you might, I'm sure a lot of you know already, the way we screen for cervical cancer today is the speculum exam, where woman gets on the table, gets undressed, we insert the speculum, and we collect some cells from the cervix, and we run testing on this. So it's quite invasive procedure, and certainly not for a lot of women quite uncomfortable. When we ask women, why they're not getting screened, because again, we know when women do get screened, we can actually entirely prevent cervical cancer. But the problem is that women aren't getting screened. And so these are some of the reasons why, these are some of the barriers, if you will, for why women are not getting access to screening. So it's cost, it's embarrassment, anxiety, anticipation of pain, presence of male physicians. These are some of the reasons. Also, in general, when we look at the screening participation rate, we are seeing that it has been declining, that fewer women are actually going in, which is causing a spike in the number of cervical cancer cases, which of course is a costly thing emotionally devastating to actually, develop late-stage cancer, especially given it is entirely preventable, but also costly for society. So how can we make this better? How can we make the screening modality more accessible? And that's kind of where the Q-Pad comes in. When we ask women, would they prefer the Q-Pad over the Pap smear, 94% report back that they would. And that's, of course, because it is entirely non-invasive and can be done at the comfort of one's own home. When we look at why women, are more comfortable with the Q-Pad, it is because it removes many of the barriers that are currently making it hard for women to get screened. Of course, with the exception of actually detecting the virus that causes the cancer. So this next slide is a little bit about kind of our very first study that we published. It was funded by the Cancer Institute at Stanford University Hospital and was run at their clinic with their team. And what we found was, without going into too much detail and boring you with all that, the sort of nuances here, but just very high level, what we found was very encouraging, that the Q-Pad is able to detect the viruses that causes the cancer very accurately when compared to a clinician collected cervical specimen. So very, very exciting, encouraging result, and something that we are working to continue to hopefully bring to the population as fast as we can. Just to give you kind of an idea of other areas of women's health that we've looked at, and I will say at this point, we've tested over 1,000 women. We've interviewed even more than that. And of course, when we ask women, what areas of your health are you interested in monitoring with this platform? And these are some of the areas that women are reporting back that we have looked at in a clinical laboratory, that have been validated in a clinical laboratory. And they cover, of course, hemoglobin A1C, which is a very important biomarker for the part of the population that are living with diabetes, but also pre-diabetes, gestational diabetes patients. And I would say generally, it is an important biomarker in general for our health. Then a lot of women, of course, interested in fertility, and also perimenopause, women that are entering that phase of life, to understand their symptoms and know what their body is going through, is something we hear that a lot of women are excited about, and where we know the Q-Pad can actually monitor that very accurately. Thyroid health is another one, inflammation, and then a high-risk HPV, which is what we talked a little bit about, which is the cervical cancer indication. But of course, when thinking about kind of Qvin and where we as a team are putting our first focus, really it is on the part of the population that are living with diabetes, which I know affects a lot of the people who are on this call as well today. So I want to talk a little bit about that in particular. Oh, let's see here what happened. Thanks. One of our slides disappeared. Let me try again. So we recently, I'm not sure you are seeing my screen. When I go to full screen, it looks black on my screen.
It is black, so you
Okay,
go to the
let me
next
just
slide. Mhm.
Yeah, I'll go out of a full screen so you can see the slide. But this is really hemoglobin A1C is an indication that we that I just mentioned, that we care a lot about. Our goal here is to make healthcare more accessible for the part of the population that live with diabetes, and empowering diabetes management through this non-invasive opportunity through a woman's period. And so we recently obtained FDA clearance for this particular indication, which allows women to monitor the hemoglobin A1C instead of going in and getting a venipuncture. So we're very excited. It's the first diagnostic menstrual pad to ever obtain FDA clearance. So we really think this is the beginning of what could become a very important opportunity for women's health, starting with women that live with diabetes. And, as we go through validating various biomarkers, and including, hemoglobin A1C, it is a very rigorous process. As I mentioned, this is certainly not something that, happened overnight. We've been at it for 10 years. When we run studies, typically how it works, and studies are something that we continue to run, and we, encourage women to participate in research. And we really could not have done this without women being part of our clinical trials and being willing to participate. And basically what we ask women to do in these trials is, they use the Q-Pad like they normally would use a pad during their period. And then very shortly after that, we do a venipuncture, and we take a blood draw. And we then take both samples and we run them in a clinical laboratory using the same equipment, and then we compare the results. And so these are some of the studies that we do. We also we ship the samples all around the country, to areas of the country with high temperature, high humidity, low temperature, low humidity. We tested for various stability. We tested for all the different, products that a woman may use during her period, especially in that region. And that is all kind of then submitted to the FDA. And then, we're excited that this got FDA clearance, that the data is really speaking for itself here. When we ask women, why are they excited about the Q-Pad? Why are they using it? Just wanted to mention some of the benefits of the hemoglobin A1C test and the Q-Pad. And of course, a lot of women are excited that it is an at-home needle-free alternative, that they can avoid scheduling, going in, taking time off from work, or, having to not go to school because they have to go in. And because the app is showcasing, especially the deltas, how is your A1C changing, which is really important to monitor. It makes it sort of very user friendly to stay on top of what are the life choices that we are making, and how is that impacting our A1C goals. Some women report back that it is comforting that before you go into the doctor's office for your routine A1C test, that you actually kind of know where your A1C is even before you go in, that there's no surprises when you show up for your doctor's visit. So these are some of the benefits. One thing that we also hear is women that are trying to become pregnant, that they have specific A1C goals, and it's nice, a convenient way for them to kind of track that as they are going through their fertility journey. So we are very excited about that, and hope that this platform and this opportunity will help women living with diabetes get access to care and their information in the most convenient way. So there's two offerings, and I would say that one of the things that we thought a lot about as we were making this offering available for women is that it has to be accessible. And so you can purchase the A1C Q-Pad on Amazon, but also on Qvin.com, and it's $29 per kit. Each kit has 2 Q-Pads, and it comes with pre-stamped mailing. And we are really here trying to match the average copay that women would pay if they are to go into the laboratory or to the doctor's office to get a blood draw. And so in that way, we are really trying to make it accessible. You can also buy a 4-pack, and that will save you a little bit on each kit. Want to also mention that it is FSA HSA eligible. So certainly, that spend can go towards, your A1C testing and covering that for the year using the Q-Pad. As we've been through this journey and really understanding how this can be an opportunity for women, we've looked at a number of assays. We talked about some of them today, but I do want to say that we are just scratching the surface of what is really possible with menstrual blood and the utility of menstrual blood. I think I mentioned a little bit early on that when we started, there was really no data on the utility or even, frankly, the composition of menstrual blood. And although we've done a lot of research, we've worked with very incredible institutions like Stanford Hospital. Even then, and we're 10 years into the journey, we are still just scratching the surface of how this could become an opportunity for women, not just in terms of how we use menstrual blood in the clinic, but also one of the things we hope, of course, with women using the Q-Pad, of course, first and foremost, that they get information about what's going on in their bodies, but also that we collectively can enhance women's health and really start to understand some of these big women's health issues that we don't have a lot of information on today, and also start to really revoke this stigma that surrounds menstrual blood, which unfortunately, in many regions of the world, even in our country, still menstrual blood, it continues to be a taboo and a stigma, and something that can be sort of looked at as a little bit of a shameful thing, or as a waste product or something dirty. And we're really hoping to change that conversation, that this is actually an incredible opportunity, a window into our health that we've been throwing away every month. Let's start to give women the choice to be able to use that. I would say even when I was in medical school and kind of in the medical industry, I was not aware of just how far behind women's health actually is. It is something that I've learned only kind of after graduating and being kind of working out in the field a little bit more, that it is really, really scary, actually, how far behind we are, how women haven't been included in clinical trials systematically and historically. Really not until 1993 was it even a sort of criteria that women should be included in clinical trials. So we are decades behind in terms of understanding the female biology. When it comes to diagnosis and even treatment, we really haven't studied the data on female biology, and predominantly, historically speaking, it has been done on male biology, and that does create some biases, right? And so we really hope to find a way to close that gender data gap that exists in medicine. And really, to do that and to accelerate our understanding of female biology, we have to find areas where women have an advantage and where the research can be done very effectively at low cost, accessible, and at scale. And menstrual blood might just be that advantage that makes that possible. So to end this presentation, I realized I didn't even go into full screen mode here, so I'll just do that for the ending slide. My apologies. But I want to encourage everyone here to participate in research. The importance of women being represented in the data, and making sure that when we do trials and we are making conclusions on how we diagnose, which symptoms we are looking for, how we treat, how we develop drugs for specific indications, that female biology is present, that it is equally represented in the data, and that, of course, together we can create the future of women's health, and we can start to really close some of these big questions and big conditions that we are lacking information about for this generation, but certainly also for the next generation. So I want to thank you for listening, and of course, thank you, Diabetes Sisters, for having us here today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Naseri. That was great. And we're right behind you in creating the future for women's health at Diabetes Sisters. So I love it. Thank you. So for those of you who have questions, please put them into the Q&A, and we'll be addressing some of the questions. And we just got a really nice comment that I want to read. And it was, "Hello, what a fantastic idea." It's from an anonymous sender. "I read about the Q-Pad in the invite, and I would love to know how I can somewhat get access to the Q-Pad." And I know Dr. Naseri had it in her slides, but also on our handouts, that if you go to our website, the link to get it is in the handout as well. And then another question, "I did my test and sent it yesterday." So we have a user, which
Amazing.
is great. And the kids have clear instructions, and it was very easy to follow up. So I think that is another.
Very happy to hear that. Always, we are still continuing and would love to hear from women using it, how we can make it even better. This is something we care deeply about. So happy to hear that so far it has been a good experience. And congratulations of sending in your first. That's very exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's always great to have somebody who's experienced it to really talk about it. So another question really has to do with kind of like the accuracy. And I know you talked a little bit about that in your slides on the equivalent to an A1C, a lab draw, and then the delay in, like, if you waited 3 days to get in the mail, or if there was a holdup in the mail. You said that the stability of it was around 28 days. So if you could just maybe readdress that, that would be great.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring it out, Donna, because I actually don't think I spoke too much about that. I mentioned that, of course, we've done extensive stability testing. It's part of why we were even able to obtain FDA clearance. It was to be able to show the stability of the test system. And so you're absolutely right, Donna. The stability is 28 days. So once you've collected your Q-Pad and you remove the strip by pulling that tab and you put it in that container that comes with the kit, that sample is stable for up to 28 days. Of course, I would say on average, women ship it maybe, within the first 1 or 2 days. And then it takes, on average, about 3 to 5 days for us to receive it in the lab with standard mail. And then we will analyze it. So we are rarely close to the 28 days, and we do encourage women to ship the sample as soon as possible, just to kind of avoid, if there is any delay in mailing, that does happen every now and then, that it doesn't sort of hinder us from running the test. But the stability is 28 days. So in that way, there is no rush, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great. Great. And another question on your test kits, the one that the single test has 2 pads, could they use that 2 months, or is it just in case they drop it or whatever?
Yeah, so no, each kit is intended for a month, and you know, when you receive the mailing container, there is room for 2 strips, and they have to be shipped before your next cycle. So it is, you know, each kit is for a month, and we have 2 Q-pads because it's essentially a backup Q-pad in case something was to happen with the sample, or, you know, some women may, you know, use it on a day of very light flow, and then, you know, they use it the next day and they have heavier flow, and then, you know, the laboratory professionals can then look at, they have sort of 2 options to make sure that we will always be able to return a result to the user. So it is a backup and intended for 1 month. And with the 4 pack, you're essentially covering for the year, because typically, you know, women will test every quarter, although some women will test more often, some women will test a little less often. But the idea is sort of that you can cover yourself for the year, and especially if you are using FSA HSA, then we realize that it's nice to be able to do that, especially towards the end of the year. So that's the intention of the 4 pack.
Great, great. And then can you explain why the pad was used versus a tampon or a cup?
Yes, it's a great question. And we've actually tested many different ways of collecting menstrual blood. And it turns out that the collection itself actually matters. And I guess it's not super surprising, perhaps. You know, of course, the way we collect any sample and how we store it and all these aspects are important for, you know, the integrity of that sample. And so what we found is that the stability and the consistency of using a menstrual pad was just higher. But also, you know, this is when we think about kind of accessibility, and most women have used a menstrual pad, and, you know, I'm talking about across age groups and across different religions and cultural beliefs, etc., that the pad is still the most commonly used product out there. And so that's also one of the reasons why we started with the pad. And I think it's important, you know, we do a lot of our users are women that, you know, use tampons, especially in our part of the world. Of course, a lot of women use tampons, but this is not a replacement of your feminine hygiene product habits. It is one product per period. So a lot of women who are maybe using tampons or cups will use it, you know, let's say they sleep with it overnight or something like that, and then they go back to their regular product. So, you know, that's kind of how we are, the feedback that we are hearing, but it has to do with the accuracy of the results, and also a little bit about the invasiveness of other collection devices versus the Q-Pad. You know, is there a future where we would consider other collection devices? Absolutely. But we are currently, you know, the consistency and the accuracy of the Q-Pad is just extremely good, and that's sort of where we're starting.
Great, great. Another question. When are all the tests, when will the tests be available, I guess, once they send it in? How long? You said, if you could just kind of
I'd say
reiterate.
about a week is the average around time. So if you ship it right away, and, you know, the average 3 to 5 days, then typically we are seeing you'll have your results within about a week.
Very good. Okay, another question from an anonymous attendee. When should I use the Q-Pad, and how long is it recommended?
That's a great question. And, you know, it is very variable from women to women, from woman to woman, when you are having a period and when your flow is light versus heavy. So, you know, what we will sort of, our guidance is to use it on a day of heavy flow, but that can be very different for women. I would say majority of our users will use the Q-Pad on the second day of their period. That's just because that's typically where the flow is the highest. We do have a smaller number of women who actually use it on the third day, and a very small number of women who uses on the fourth day. So I'd say it is a little bit sort of personal in some ways when that time is, but it is what we encourage is that you use it on a day with heavy flow, which typically is the second day.
Good. Okay, and here's a long question. It says, so interesting about the accuracy. How is the process of working with the FDA? And what happens if I somehow use other products during the use? Couldn't that impact my sample? I also have a little bit of incontinence after giving birth. birth. So could that be a problem?
My friend, you're not alone. This is definitely not an uncommon issue. And, part of us getting a clearance for this product was to make sure that these, whether it's incontinence or even other things or products, that these are all, they were all part of the FDA submission and tested for how they impact accuracy. So we've tested more than 50 different potentially interfering substances, including urine. So that one, has been tested quite extensively to see how it impacts the results. And the FDA clearance basically is that, a lot of women will have these kinds of issues. A lot of women will, use products and it doesn't, the data shows that it doesn't actually impact the accuracy of the results. And the details of that can be found when you receive the Q-Pad. There is a little booklet. Also on the app, you can actually read a little bit more about all the different products that were tested, but they cover the vast majority of what a woman would typically use, like soap and different medications as well that you may be using it during that time. So I think part of the reason, the question of how was it to go through the FDA process, I would say it was very long. And, I think rightfully so, right? Because we want to make sure that when we put a product out there, that it is working and that women can collect themselves. At the moment we ask a patient to collect at home, we have to make sure that it's bulletproof. And there was actually not a lot of at-home collection devices that have obtained FDA clearance. Typically, you have to go into the clinic to collect. Even something simple as a urine sample, right, doesn't actually have FDA clearance to be done at home. And it's because it has to be so bulletproof. And I think where the Q-Pad platform is so powerful and what a lot of women will say, outside of it being convenient and no needles and I don't need to schedule, the fact that it's passive collection, I don't have to prick my finger or, make sure my hands are clean and wait for one drop to pass and then use it, like swab myself. There's really, as a woman using this product, everything sort of happens naturally, right? It is passively collected. You're having your period, unfortunately, whether we want it or not. And so your body is sort of doing it for you. And I think that's part of why we were able to obtain the clearance also, is that it is so simple. But it's a long process. And I would say I cannot think of any really questions that hasn't been, scrutinized and really looked at and really kind of looked at in depth. We have a team that worked really, really hard. And it was a big moment for the team. I think a big moment for women's health, really, that, for the first time in history, our periods are actually looked at as valuable, clinically speaking, and important for our health. So a lot of these questions, were part of that submission, but definitely appreciate bring them up, and definitely happy to answer any other questions around this topic.
Yeah, and another question on the accuracy, you can tell if you don't have enough blood on it, those two little, I guess the two little squares. So they just need to make sure that when they pull the testing strip from the pad that it has a certain look, and they need to be cognizant of that, correct?
Yeah, but actually even before that, the Q-Pad, one of the differences, so I mentioned one of the differences is that you pull this tab, of course, when you compare it to a normal menstrual pad, but the other difference is that there is this little oval printed on the Q-Pad, and it basically says that, fill before finishing use. And what it means is, once that oval is covered, then you've collected enough, and we certainly have enough to run testing on it. So even before you pull out the strip, you can actually visually see when the oval is covered, and that's how you know that
Perfect.
there's absolutely enough there for running a test.
Perfect. Okay, next question. Just a comment from my person story. I wish this was available sooner, for example, for pre-diabetes screening, which is a great point. So I could maybe have learned about my higher A1C levels earlier. So I could have taken measurements to combat my type 2 diabetes diagnosis by lowering my A1C. This could have a huge impact. And whoever sent that in is absolutely correct. So thank you for sending that comment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is really, really why this company exists. We are what we hope to do is the early side of any condition, and how can we actually prevent that? And you're so right. And again, I can also echo Donna in thanking you for sharing that, because when we do detect this early, we can prevent, especially type 2 diabetes. So the goal here is certainly that, women can get this information and know when their A1C is elevated. And, even if that is a trend that is continuing as they're using it regularly, hopefully to see, okay, it's not just a little elevated, but it's actually trending in the wrong direction. Let's go early and see what I can change in my day-to-day to prevent from continuing this trend. That is the entire goal of why we exist. It is to see how can we make it easy and accessible for women to know what's going on in their bodies. So exactly to your point, they can catch things early and prevent these outcomes that we don't want for anybody and for our own health. So absolutely spot on. That is the goal of this platform.
Yes, and when you think of it, we have a huge at-risk population. We have women who've went through gestational diabetes, and up to 50% can go on to develop type 2. So there's a huge utility for it. So just to reiterate, somebody wrote in, what if my flow is light and doesn't fill the entire oval? Is it okay to send it in? So maybe just read.
We do advise that women send it in because oftentimes the oval is sort of a safety check in that way that we certainly know that we can collect. If you cannot fill the oval, we still ask you to send it in because very likely the laboratory professionals will be able to run a test, but it is not a guarantee because, of course, to run a test, there needs to be sample on the strips. So I would say, many times we can run it, but there are instances where if the flow is so light that there just isn't enough blood, then we won't be able to run it, and we'll let you know if that's the case. But we certainly don't want you not, you've gone through, collection, you've sort of done the hard work, if you will. We definitely don't want you to kind of not send it in just because of that, because again, often we will be able to return a result.
Very good. Another interesting question. What has been the reception from endocrinologists and other healthcare providers?
That's a great question. I would say early in Qvin's journey, we had sort of a mixed reaction. I think a lot of physicians. I remember the very first time we spoke to the head of OBGYN at Stanford University Hospital and his colleagues, including endocrinologists. They were sort of like, oh my God, why have we not thought of this? Like, it was right in front of us. Women are bleeding. Why are we drawing blood from women when they're literally bleeding every month? And so I remember that kind of excitement and curiosity certainly was there. We also did experience some clinicians who kind of reacted more as, that's kind of gross. And, early on, it was hard to find laboratory partners. And to me, it's kind of mind blowing because, at that point in time, we had researched every other bodily fluid in the human body, right? We knew, of course, blood very well. We knew we had researched urine. We understood feces. We had looked at sweat. We've even, researched tears. So the fact that menstrual blood hadn't been looked at, this very convenient way to get access to blood for not a few people, we're talking half of the world, right, that have this experience, was something that really blew my mind. And, I think early on, there was like almost a barrier to really open up for the conversation and move past potential stigma and biases to the important question of how can this be helpful for patients. Today, however, it's a very different conversation. And I think, as we have done research and we've published our data and it is peer reviewed and we are able to look at the data, it's no longer about opinion. And it's very gratifying actually to have experienced that change in the reception and conversation from, potential opinion, or this is a little bit dirty or maybe gross for some people, to actually like this is the data speaks for itself. The utility is absolutely there. And now we can have really focused conversations about how can we make this available for patients? How can we make healthcare more accessible for women in America?
Yeah, especially, you hate to use the word, but compliance, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to use that word today, but it's so important, the utility of it, the ease of use and all of that. Yes, and then a closing remark, Dr. Naseri, it's a great comment. So whoever sent this in, thank you. She says yes in capital letters and says pre-diabetes with an exclamation mark. And then can you partner with the diabetes prevention programs? What a great way to really start spreading the word. And we're glad Diabetes Sisters is able to help. So that is like really exciting.
Absolutely. And we are fully aware, although we have an incredible team, and in my world, they can do anything. But we are aware that, of course, to really make an impact here and make this available, and even starting with the awareness, right? For women to even know that this is an opportunity, for women to, and once they know, to then have a choice, right? It's really about choice to be able
Exactly.
to use this if you choose to do so. But to even get to the awareness, we cannot absolutely not do this alone. We need institutions, we need medical professionals, we need, associations like Diabetes Sisters and the diabetes prevention programs to collaborate. And so we certainly would love to partner with anyone that have it as a mission to make diabetes management easier. We are here. We'd love to have the conversation, and it is something that we are working on, kind of expanding the partnership opportunities. So it's a great comment, and definitely something that we
Yeah.
we really want to kind of do more of in the future as well.
Absolutely. So great era for women's health. So thank you. So everybody, thank you for your wonderful and thoughtful questions. And Dr. Naseri, thank you for this inspiring presentation. Remember, all of our webinars are recorded and available on demand for your convenience. Thank you again, Dr. Naseri. This has been great. And thank you to everyone who joined and for the great questions. And everyone have a wonderful week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.